Well, let's talk a bit more then about that hostage aid deal for Gaza. John Lyndon joins me live on the programme. He's the Executive Director of the Alliance for Middle East Peace. Good to talk to you, sir. Thanks for making the time.
Good to be with you.
Now, listen, in recent weeks, we haven't heard a whole lot about the hostages who are stuck in Gaza, but this deal does suggest to me that not only do international actors know they are alive, but perhaps organisations like the ICRC know where these people are being held.
I'm not as confident that's necessarily the case. It was supposed to have been a condition of the previous hostage deal that was brokered before the end of last year that the ICRC would gain access to be able to check on the health and condition of hostages. But to my knowledge, that hasn't taken place, certainly at scale. And as a reminder, what was agreed today, and it is important and a very good thing that it's happened, it is the base requirement under international humanitarian law in that Israel should be providing access for medicine and Hamas should be allowing access for the ICRC to check on the condition of hostages or prisoners of war. And in that sense, I hope that we do in this exercise that's taking place now get some sort of sense of the physical condition of the hostages, many of whom, as you said, are old and infirm and have now been held captive for over 100 days.
And what's your understanding of logistically how this is to work today? The ICRC will physically bring the medicines into Gaza, will they? And it's those individuals who will go check on the hostages?
I mean, the whole logistical operation, from what I can gather, is odd in that the medicines themselves are being dispatched from a crisis centre in France via diplomatic packet. Then they arrived in Qatar to be flown under with a ship, or a plane rather, with a Qatari flag to El Arish airport, and then to cross Rafah into Gaza. And my understanding is that, and again, I don't know if this is confirmed, I've seen reporting, that the ICRC themselves will likely not be delivering the medicines, and there may not be a way to ensure that they actually reach the hostages. And again, I don't know if that's confirmed or not, but I haven't seen confirmation that the ICRC themselves will gain access to the hostages. And that's really, really important because they're medical professionals who can check on their condition in addition to giving this life-saving aid. And then in addition, the medication being brought into Gaza, we have fewer than 50% of the hospitals in Gaza operational right now. We need to make sure those medicines are speeded as quickly as possible to the people that need them most acutely, and that this shipment is followed by more sustained entry for medicines day on day, week on week. This can't be a one-off deal.
And is that your hope now then, that this deal being brokered by France and Qatar is just the first step in aid being let in a far bigger way? Clearly, as you say, Palestinians in Gaza in huge need right now.
Yes, I mean, it's very frustrating. We were having these conversations back in November, I remember, very similar terms as well. In fact, France was playing a leading role then. And here we are, months afterwards, still negotiating over things that should be the baseline requirements rather than things that require many hours of the engagement from heads of government in order to broker. We want that same diplomatic attention and bandwidth to actually be focused upon the other more difficult forward-looking issues around de-escalating this conflict and bringing a ceasefire into place, around the full release of all of the hostages, and obviously then about addressing the underlying conditions that brought us to this terrible, terrible place. And for all the diplomats are focused on these transactional, difficult, no doubt, but ultimately, as I said, baseline requirements around medication and food, as important as they are, they're not then looking at these more sort of forward-oriented diplomatic initiatives that can actually end the violence and begin to address the underlying conflict between Palestinians and Israelis.
And if I could just ask you a broader final question, the Israeli government has been suggesting that it's entering a sort of third phase of the war where more of its troops will pull out of the north and of the south of Gaza. But as we've been reporting on France 24, Israeli bombardments of Gaza remain intense. What's your understanding as to what is actually happening on the ground and what Israel's strategy is for the moment?
You're right. I mean, there's been acute violence over the last 48 hours in particular in the southern Gaza Strip. So that doesn't necessarily square up with what we're hearing about this new phase, which will see less intense violence than has come beforehand. Now, we have seen the removal of a battalion from the Gaza Strip who would be brought up, I believe, to the north of Israel, and also an elite commando unit that were removed this week from Gaza to the West Bank, I believe. So you are seeing some troop redeployment, and hopefully then you will begin to see a reduction in violence. But at the moment, the rhetoric around that doesn't necessarily match up with what we're seeing on the ground. And I think, again, we do need to try and ensure that the level of violence is being brought down to the absolute minimum and then none at all, so that diplomacy can begin to be engaged. And again, we can begin to address these underlying issues, as well as the reconstruction effort that will be required in Gaza and deconfliction. As great as it is to be getting medicines and foods into Gaza, and we hope that more and more gets in, whilst there is active violence of the level that we're seeing, it's very difficult for those food and medicines to be able to reach the people that need them, because convoys are very often in danger themselves of loss of life or injury. So that reduction in violence, if it comes, this other phase we're talking about, needs to be matched with a huge infusion of aid and medicines to take advantage of whatever relative calm we get.
John Lyndon from the Alliance of Middle East Peace. It's good to talk to you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.